So, our first candidate for exactly 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome candidate Joe Connolly.
Thanks, Brian. It's good to see you. Thank you for coming out, everyone. Good to see everybody here today. I think when we talk about politicians, you want to know about 3 things. You want to know about their motivations, you want to know about their qualifications, and you want to know about their results, whether in or outside of politics. My story starts in the 1950s when my family immigrated from Scotland to Canada. And we settled in a small town just outside of Toronto called Thistletown. My father worked for de Havilland and worked in Malton, which became Pearson Airport. And in about 1955, my father tragically died in a car accident. So my mother was left with raising 4 boys under the age of 10. And what she did was she instilled in us many values. And those values still reign true today. Hard work, being frugal, and the importance of education. And when I left high school, I took a year off and I was crossing Canada with my friends. We were heading to Vancouver to spend that year between high school and university. And we ended up in Calgary for a 3-day visit, and I never left. I love this city. It's a great city. And I was so impressed with the people and the attitude here, and I came to realize that this is where I wanted to settle. This is where I wanted to go to school. This is where I wanted to raise a family, and this is where all the opportunities lay before me. And that's before I got to the mountains and found out about the great skiing out here. I entered the University of Calgary, and I supported myself by working as a bartender. I like to say I worked on Electric Avenue before electricity because it goes back so far. But the opportunities came, and I've had a great business career over the last 25 years. I worked for General Foods, and I worked for TELUS. I was a successful entrepreneur when I broke the telephone monopoly of $25 million, and if you think it's easy taking on a monopoly, I got a story for you. I'll see you at the break. I was a best-selling Canadian author. And so I've worked for blue chips. I've worked for small and medium enterprises. I've been a successful entrepreneur, but the thing I'm most proud of was when I worked for a not-for-profit. A little not-for-profit called Tourism Calgary, where I went around the world promoting this great city. So when you talk about how do you view Calgary, I think I view Calgary with a different lens than a lot of other people. I look at Calgary as in terms of how fortunate we are and how fortunate to have the opportunities we have before us. I've been all over North America. I've been to probably probably every major center in North America. And we are very fortunate here in Calgary. Very fortunate indeed. When I was about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I worked in the community a great deal with youth and stuff, and I ended up being community president. The community came forward and asked me to be president because we had some challenges within the community. There was a battle between young families coming in and the seniors that had built that great community, and I was brought in as the peacekeeper. And I'm proud to say in 3 years, I got everybody flying in the right direction, and I got everybody seeing the value of both sides of the argument. And we had some great successes while I was there. And it wasn't me alone, it was myself and the board. We doubled the footprint, the size of the hall. We put in a skating rink, and we put in some traffic lights so kids could get to school. And then just 3 years ago, roughly, the community came to me again, and they wanted me to run. And they wanted me to run in Ward 6, and they wanted me to be an alderman. So I took up the challenge, and I was successful in defeating a 2-term incumbent. And I say that quite often. In last debate, I said it as well, and I didn't realize at the time that it comes with a cost. It comes with a cost to the person who lost, and that person is here today. And I feel I have to apologize because it wasn't meant to be an insult to Craig. I wanted to just point out my success, but I forgot that when you're successful, quite often someone else hurts because of that. So Craig, my apologies to you. I want to shake your hand, I do. Craig asked if I'm going to buy a beer, and I always buy a beer. Craig and I actually played hockey yesterday, but you know, I want to applaud Craig because you know what, he got back in the saddle, and he's back here today. And I want to congratulate him for taking that charge up, because as everyone knows on this panel, it's not easy running for mayor, and it's not easy being in politics. I want to talk to you a little bit about my results now, because my results, I think, are significant, being an alderman. First of all, I brought $1 billion, that's a billion with a B, $1 billion worth of infrastructure to Ward 6, including the west leg of the LRT. $61 million for the trench on 17th Avenue, $8 million for the West Side Rec Center, $10 million for the Signal Hill Library, 2 new interchanges, a new fire hall, But the thing I'm probably most proud of, ladies and gentlemen, is I elevated the fire department to come to the planning table. So they'll be there when we plan new communities, and I think that's critically important. I championed artificial turfs. I preserved the brand, Calgary, Heart of the New West, because to do a new brand is a waste of money. We did a ton of research on it in the year 2000, and it's a great brand. The only people who don't seem to like it are certain members of council. I preserved the sister cities relationship when that was in question, because we need that. That's an economic advantage that we need to have. And if you like free parking evenings and weekends, that was me as well. So I think I've done well, but more importantly that, I've got perfect council attendance, and I delivered on common sense by voting against the $25 million pedestrian bridge, against the $12 million for the Cecil Hotel, and against the 2008 3-year budget impact fund. Let's wait for a bun.
Thanks, Joe. The buns are in the mail. Craig Burrows, speaker number 2, candidate for, ladies and gentlemen, Craig Burrows.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. It's finally inspiring to see that people want to get involved in this next campaign. The next mayor we're choosing is someone that could potentially be here for a few years. But today I want to talk about why I want to run for mayor, why I'm so passionate in my family to give back. Some of you may or may not know I come from a family of cops. My brother's an RCMP officer who was an air marshal after 9/11, any gang unit in Toronto, and counterterrorism. I got another brother who's an OPP officer as a traffic cop, and he'll tell you 100% that speeding kills, and you're more likely to be killed by a speeding car than a speeding bullet. And lastly, a sister who's a police officer in London who's in the domestic violence unit. So when I talk about public safety, I don't just talk about safe streets. I talk about safer homes. Now, Calgarians, we built this city, and you should feel safe in it. And that's why, as a police commissioner, I was proud to bring beat cops to downtown. Give Chief Hansen and the officers the resources they need to do their job to keep us safe. But as we move forward, I want to increase additional safety on LRT platforms and make them safe and clean. Now, you worked hard for your dollars, and you deserve we spend your money properly with value. First thing I'm going to do as mayor, job one, is I'm bringing in the Provincial Auditor General to see what has been going on. We've seen over the last 3 years, a council that can't follow a tender process. How do you lose $123 million and find it again? I don't know how that happens. And we've had members of council here, especially our fiscal hawk on council, not find this money. How has that happened? Now, what I want to look at doing is also the importance of this city and council has to start working better with other orders of government, especially the province. We need to work together to find solutions for today's challenges. And one thing I want to work with the province and the federal government on is my #1 transportation issue. It's not just only the airport tunnel, but the LRT to the airport. And I'll tell you why it's so important. That LRT is important. We are as a city, we are a great city, no question, but we're poised to be a world-class city. And we can be a world-class city if we build our downtown that's connected to our airport. That airport is the 3rd largest airport in the country. It's the 3rd largest employment center. We have an opportunity of a lifetime to really make our city world-class. You've created vibrant communities. We need to work together to implement sustainable planning. We can't continue to keep moving out. We need to look at moving up. But the reality is, if we don't put the right processes in place to provide housing for things like secondary suites or developing around transit-oriented developments, it will never happen. We will always continue to build out. And places like Airdrie and Open Coast will continue to grow and take our tax dollars out of our community. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure that I want you to know that I'm not just someone who worries about policing and the bottom line. A mayor has to be someone who cares for all Calgarians, so we don't leave anyone behind. As an alderman, I worked with Mayor Bonconnie on the Westgate Hotel project. That project was about getting families, homeless families, off the streets and working with local agencies. To me, that is what being a mayor is about, is making sure that the weakest in our communities are not left behind. And it doesn't have to be a situation where we spend money that's not sustainable. I also believe that the greatest thing about this city are Calgarians and our volunteers. And I want to signal out one particular volunteer, someone like Wayne Stewart, a gentleman who has given back to his community through working with the Homeless Foundation. Those are the kind of people that work hard for our communities, and they do it with nothing in other than just making sure we have a great city. So Wayne, thank you, and all the great volunteers that do. Lastly, I want to talk about what I think is wrong in the City Council, why it's disconnected. Ladies and gentlemen, in the worst economic times, this council gave themselves a 5.5% raise, while many people were suffering, losing jobs, maybe job cuts to keep their jobs. That 5.5% led to a 12% tax increase that you had to pay. It had nothing to do with hiring more police officers to plow the streets. It had simply about paying 16,000 people 10%. Do you know if they would have showed leadership and froze their salaries, what your property tax would be today? 2%. And you look at the bridge, a $25 million bridge. What I have a problem with the bridge is that you're telling me that you don't have the money to plow our streets, but you can build a $25 million bridge. Those are the questions about priorities. We're going to get back to basics. We're going to do fire and police protection. I'm going to plow the streets when it snows. I'm going to pick up your garbage, and I'm going to fix the potholes. And that is local government at its finest. And when we work with volunteer agencies like Homeless Foundation, we will find solutions to make sure that all Calgarians grow in our city.
Thank you, candidate Burrows. Candidate for mayor, Naheed Nenshi.
Never. We've heard ourselves enough now. We should probably just do it. Thank you. This is great. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you all for, luckily the weather stinks, so I can't say thank you all for taking a beautiful summer afternoon. But thank you all for coming, and thank you all for being so engaged in the future of this great city. Let me start by telling you a little bit about me. I grew up in Calgary, not far from here as a matter of fact, to a first-generation Canadian family that struggled a little bit while I was growing up. We didn't have a lot of money, but what I had was a lot of opportunity. I had opportunity to graduate from fantastic public schools. I had opportunity to make use of public libraries and public transit, public pools where I learned to swim badly. And for that, I really consider myself a product, a child of this great community. And that's really the underpinning of everything that I do in the community today, is that every kid growing up in the city, whether in the Northeast or the Southwest, whether a newly arrived Canadian family or a fifth-generation Canadian family, needs that opportunity, needs that ability to be able to succeed. And the kind of government that we give ourselves, the kind of city government that we give ourselves, is integral to that. I'm a graduate of the University of Calgary, where I did a business degree. I was president of the Students' Union there, which is how I really first learned about how nonprofits and governments organize themselves. I've worked in the big leagues of business. I always say I'm the only guy you'll ever meet whose two biggest clients are the United Nations and the Gap. They have more in common than you would think. Typically on very big numbers. I worked with the United Nations, for example, on determining how the private sector can help the poorest people in the world. These are billion-dollar, $100 million decisions that I worked with. But I also love cities. And when I had the chance to come back to Calgary after working and living in cities around the world, after going to graduate school at Harvard to learn about public administration, after paying off my hideous school debt, I had the opportunity to come back to this great city I love. I wrote a little bit, I thought a little bit about how cities work. And you may know me over the last few years as being the City Hall columnist for the Calgary Herald, as well as for CBC Radio 1. What I do for you is sit through city council meetings. It's good that I do this for you. Because I always say,